grown up with a typical old German style of playing. And then one day I heard Gary Carr. And I thought, oh my God, that is what I've been waiting to do. You know, it was amazing.
It was so wonderful chatting with today's guest. I'm Jason Heath. This is Contrabass Conversations, and we are talking today with David Daly, who's principal bass of the Bournemouth Symphony in Britain and has released a solo album, his debut album, and what a debut album. I'm so excited to dig into this album. It's titled Titanic Double Bass, and there is a video that went out and has gotten, I think, almost 50,000 hits at this point of David playing in epic fashion the title track. David, we talk about this in the conversation, but David's great uncle was on board the Titanic when it sank. He was a bagpipe player, and he actually survived. This story is on David's website, daviddailymusic.net. Definitely go check it out. It's a heartwarming story. It's an incredible tale. And talk about incredible. The way that David has framed this album on the internet and on his website, it's one of the most in-depth explorations of an album I've seen, and it really turns the album into an audiovisual experience, though the album itself is great. We have links to that. We have links to his site and everything in the show notes for this episode. And I would like to give a quick shout out to our sponsors, D'Addario Strings, Steve Swan String Bass, Upton Bass, and Colstein Music. More on them later, but let's dive into this conversation with David Daly.
Hello. Hi, Jason.
Hi, David.
It's a real treat. You know, man, it's amazing.
Hey, this is a treat, too. It's modern technology, right? How cool is it
Amazing,
that we can be,
yeah.
you know, so far apart, you know, geographically? But
yeah, but I mean, I've been listening to your podcast, because I was one of your early adopters. Probably, what was it, about 10 years ago, wasn't it?
It's been a little over 10, yeah.
Because you put yourself through school, didn't you? And
Yep.
then it was a little bit more random then.
Mhm.
I used to listen all that time. So, yeah, amazing.
Wow, that's great. Well,
No.
thank you for listening that you know, that duration, and it's great.
Great. No, you've done great work, man. You've done really good work. You know, fantastic. I must. Well, I don't know when you want to start the conversation, but when I was doing this thing in Crescendo, Hungary.
Mm-hmm.
It's a course I teach every summer,
Mm-hmm.
and I go out to Eastern Hungary, and like there was a kid from Northern Hungary, rural town, and he came down, and he's 17. He was all full of conversation. Have I heard this person? Have I heard that? He had the stickers. He gave me a sticker. Here's a 17-year-old guy in rural Hungary on his own in the town, bass player, but he knows everyone. It's amazing, isn't it? The technology, like you say.
Well, yeah, so that's amazing that he has. I remember him reaching out to me, because I do remember sending an envelope to Hungary.
The guy.
And so, wow, but what a small world. And it's so funny doing something where I'm just here at my place in San Francisco, like talking to myself or talking to you over the computer. And it's remarkable that it can have that travel. Wow.
It is. It's great. Yeah. Who knows where we're going? Yeah, fantastic.
I just love this album and the story and the detail you put in too. I love how you've on your website, you've got a page for every single piece and the detail that you go into and the video of the behind the scenes, and it's just really lovely album, first of all, but just the whole story behind it and the production. I wish that everybody did that with the release.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Oh yeah, well, absolutely. And talk about a monumental undertaking to do something like that, a real labor of love.
Yeah. It was, yes.
Wow. Yeah. Talk about a great story and like a personal story with your great uncle. A good place to start might be just the story behind the album and just your uncle and the Titanic. And I'm sure you've shared this story a lot, but maybe we can start there.
No, I love it. It's great. Let's go back to 2012, which was the centenary of the sinking of the Titanic. So it sank 15th of April, 1912. Maths struggling there. So a friend of mine, because of course I'm in the principal base of the Bournemouth Symphony, which is in the south of England, not far from a city called Southampton, which was one of the cities that the Titanic left from. So a friend of mine said, why don't we do a little tour? Let's organize, because I used to play in a little string quartet in the orchestra. So we tracked down. He knew my uncle had played on the Titanic. I had an uncle who was a bagpipe player, and he had boarded the Titanic, because the Titanic it went from Southampton over to France, to Cherbourg, then it went to Southern Ireland, and then it headed across to you guys. And so he boarded in Southern Ireland with the bagpipes, and as the ship was leaving Southern Ireland, he was playing two airs. One was Erin's Lament, the other one was A Nation Once Again. Erin's Lament, no one knew exactly what the tune was, so we had to go to the Harrow and Wheels pipe band up here in North London. A lot of trouble. We tracked down the tune. I was really curious, and had a friend in the orchestra. We found it. He arranged it for string quintet with solo bass. So we were doing a little tour, and there was a concert in Southampton, a big concert commemorating the sinking of the Titanic. A lot of people in Southampton lost, because a lot of the ship's crew came from Southampton. So there was a great tragedy for that city particularly. And so we turned with a string quintet. There was a big youth orchestra playing, and we were sort of in part of the evening, And so I'd rehearsed this. It's a beautiful piece. I like it. It's a sort of sad Irish air. It's a lament. And so anyway, concert was going on. The hall was packed with about 3,000 people, parents and kids, youth orchestra on stage as well. And we're all sort of crushed in there the way it happens sometimes. And then it came to this Erin's Lament bit. And I had said, okay, well, I'll go. It's a 5-minute piece. I said, I'll just step forward to the front of the stage. I'll play this and then come back and resume my proper bass playing duties, And I stepped forward and started playing this. And there was a slight atmosphere, it being a commemorative thing and commemorating such a sad thing, although it's become a legendary thing, particularly, I think, with so many people. There was probably descendants in Southampton of people who'd lost their lives. I started playing this tune, and the whole place went completely silent. And then there was sobbing. And I tell you, it was one of the most moving things in my life. I thought, oh my goodness, this is really, it was partly the moment and also the tune. So it was really special. And afterwards, that sort of stayed with me. And when I eventually got around to, I've been wanting to make a CD for years, as I think a lot of us do, but it's such a lot of work to do on top of having a job. And it was some years later, 2016, I got around to finally doing that. And, we'd organised sessions and I was going to do all the tracks. And I hadn't particularly thought of recording Erin's Lament or anything. I just brought it along in case we had extra time. We had a half an hour left at the end of the sessions. And so I said, hang on, Michael, to my producer. I got this one piece, since we have half an hour, and I paid a flipping fortune for the studio. I thought, I'm not leaving here 1 minute before we actually need to. So I took out a piece. My pianist said, you can't do this. We haven't rehearsed it, because we were just going aside. I said, Paul, it's fine. He's a fantastic accompanist. So let's just put it down. Let's take a few takes and see what it's like. So we played it once. A recording engineer said, David, this is beautiful. Who's recorded this? I said, well, nobody's recorded it. He said, well, who's published it? I said, well, it hasn't been published. It hadn't been at that time. It has now, Recital Music Fest. He said, oh, this is amazing. This is gold dust. Do it again. And so we did a few takes. And literally, that was it. I played the piece a lot, so I was very at home with it. Paul was fine. And in the end, it turned out to be the title track of the album. And I thought, well, actually, because, of course, in the classical music industry, people love, there's great music, like the Arpeggione. I mean, it's beautiful. But actually, have something personal that you can talk about, like we're sharing now, really helps, I think, to get people in and get them listening, which is what we need to do in the bass world, isn't it? And I was really wanted to, with my CD, to make a CD that people would enjoy listening to, as well as, I love when I hear a bass player likes it. Every time I give it to a bass player, I think, I hope he likes it, And it's great when a bass player likes it. But it's terrific when somebody who has no particular interest in music, a lot of people in my church bought one, and they came back and said, hey, that's really nice. I really like this. And I'm thinking, hey, they're liking a solo bass CD. This is good news. So that's sort of cut and dried what was going on there.
It's a great title. It would be a great title even without your personal connection to the Titanic with your great uncle. Yes. Titanic Double Bass. Yes. I mean, come on.
It's a Titanic instrument, isn't it?
It absolutely is. But then just that whole story. And then I got to ask you about this video that you filmed with, to go along with the title track, which again, talk about an epic video. Are you? Yeah. Is that a green screen I'm seeing? Are you actually there on the shore?
No, I'm there on that headland.
Get out of
6
here!
6 a.m. in March this year, freezing, absolutely freezing.
Yeah. Oh wow! Yeah. I was wondering because I thought this is the best green screen technology imaginable. Yes. Or are you really? So no. tell us about that experience. And maybe just set the scene. Yeah.
Okay, super. Yeah. So I have this CD out, and then I thought making the CD is one thing, and I did it on my own label, so to speak, rather than, because a couple of labels were going to release it, and they had said, well, send us the files and we'll release it sometime next year. And I just wasn't happy with that, because actually it's such a personal thing. I wanted when you get a copy of it, you see the actual personal packaging. I wanted to have a part to play in that. So I did my own label, but that creates difficulties in promotion. You're warning to anybody thinking of doing it. So anyway, Classic FM had very kindly, it's a major classical station here in the UK. I think they broadcast there. I'm not sure. They're on the web anyway. They had said, look, this is a nice track. We like it. Let's come down and video you playing it, and we'll put it on they have a digital media stream. I thought, great. And then I thought, that's going to be a little bit dull, just looking at me playing the bass in the studio. I thought, well, let's do something a bit more interesting. And then I thought of a few things, and I can't remember how I thought of this headland idea, but just only that's the location is about 45 minutes south of where I live. Right, I'm quite close to the south coast of England. And from that headland, you would have seen the Titanic sailing from Southampton over to France. It would have been there on the horizon, which in itself is an amazing thought, isn't it? And I thought, well, let's go down to that headland. I got in touch with a friend of mine he was just getting into the drone technology. I think he's gone full-time now. This whole drone technology is fascinating, as you can see from the thing, because the view you get is unbelievable. So we were all set up to do it. Actually, we were all set up to do it for the anniversary this year. What year are we? 2018. We were all set up to do it for 15th of March 2018. And then I broke my shoulder. So it had to be slightly later. So anyway, it was about April time or something. We went down there just before dawn. Weather was perfect. We had to be down there because it's a popular place for walking. So we had to be down there at dawn. But I think the light at dawn really helps because the sun just came up over the horizon. You had this horizontal light. I was freezing. And I mean, technologically, it was a bit difficult. So I was playing I had one of these Bluetooth speakers in my pocket. I was playing the track through that because obviously the sound was recorded in the studio. Obviously, we had added waves to that subsequently. And so I was listening to that and playing. I don't know, we had two 25-minute bursts of the drone before the batteries were dead. So you had 50 minutes recording. So technically it's quite awkward to do, but it worked out well. So I just kept playing, and we had to do, the chap, Scott, came back who was doing the video with me, and we had to sit down, and, sometimes there's a pizzicato passage and I could hear arco, and I said, no, come on, we can't do that. It has to be, because he was learning himself. But in the end, I think what he did, he got these fantastic shots of the headland, and he sort of managed the visual change of scene with the change of phrase in the music. And I think the whole thing just came out. And of course, Classic FM loved it. They posted, and within 3 hours I can't remember how, 7,000 views or something. And now it's up to about 44,000 views. So yeah, it's just a fun thing to do, isn't it? Let's get the bass out there. I really would love the bass to have a more visible presence for kids to learn. I've got two pupils. One is two small pupils. One is 10, one is 12. Those sort of kids we really want to get started, so they can get. And so that's what I'm hoping that the video and the CD will inspire parents to, put their hand in their pocket and buy a bass for the kids and get a big car so they can carry the flipping thing around.
Well, it's a wonderful way to get people excited about the bass, whether it's young people or parents or just the general public. It really is a cool video. So folks listening, definitely check it out. We'll link up to it, obviously. And I could just imagine that feeling of it being freezing. You're trying to sync up with the Bluetooth headset and hoping that the early morning folks coming on their walk aren't going to pop up yet.
Exactly.
So.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So everything, it all came together really well. I was pleased with that.
Everything else. So what a cool story. How this sort of almost afterthought at the end of your recording session turned into such an. But then every other piece on the album too. I love how you took the time and just there's a great story behind every piece on the album, really, and your decision to play it. So maybe we could go through the other tracks because. This episode is brought to you by D'Addario Strings. Our friends at D'Addario want to help listeners change their strings safely and efficiently, and they have a few tricks to help you achieve that. When you pull the string through the peg, twist it around itself a few times before continuing to wind. This pulls more of the string through the peg neatly, and it decreases the likelihood of the string falling out of tension. Learn more at orchestral.daddario.com, and thank you so much for sponsoring the podcast. Buying a double bass is a challenge for sure, and it's not getting any easier. That's why it's so great that Colstein's is offering interest-free financing on select instruments, bows, and instrument repair purchases. Learn more at Colstein.com, and while you're there, check out their wonderful selection of pedigree instruments and bows and everything else that they have to offer. Thank you so much for sponsoring the podcast. Everything else. So what a cool story. How this sort of almost afterthought at the end of your recording session turned into such an. But then every other piece on the album too. I love how you you took the time and just there's a great story behind every piece on the album, really, and your decision to play it. So maybe we could go through the other tracks, because I want people to and beautiful playing all around on the Eccles, on the Arpeggione.
Thank you very much.
On the John Kinsella piece. So could we just talk a bit about each of those pieces? Maybe we could start.
Of course, I'd love to. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Maybe we could start with the Eccles, like why the Eccles and your research into especially the piano part. Just tell us about that.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, the Eccles, of course, we all love, as bass players, we just love the Eccles, don't we? I've played it forever, and quite often it has been the favourite piece on a recital. And a lot of people have come up to me and said, is there a recording of that? And of course, well, there may be recordings, but I mean, I hadn't got a recording done. So I thought, well, you've got to do that. And I grew up, I remember it was a big moment in my development. I mean, I had a wonderful old German teacher. I learned German both to start in Dublin, who had come over from Ireland during the Second World War, was neutral. And we had a lot of European players that fled Europe during the Second World War and fled to Ireland just to get away from everything. And they, quite a few musicians in the orchestra at that time came from that era. So my German teacher had been an East German player. So I'd grown up with a typical old German style of playing. And then one day I heard Gary Carr. And I thought, oh my God, that is what I've been waiting to do, So it was amazing. So I'm sure lots of us of my generation had that experience hearing Gary, And so the Eccles was that piece that I heard him play. And so I've always played it. Latterly, when I was going to record it this time, I came across this lovely lady whose name escapes me at the moment, who had done a whole thesis on it. I discovered it had been sort of transcribed more than any other piece, almost, as for every instrument imaginable. It's not just us bass players. And also two of the movements aren't by Eccles. He's stolen them from another composer, which actually in those days that used to happen. I mean, composers would write a piece, it was played a couple of times, it put on the shelf, and they wrote another piece. It's not like nowadays where we have our library and we keep bringing them out. So it's not as shocking, I think, as it seems to us in those times. So, and also the piano part, when my piano player Paul was playing it, he said, well, this is like a sort of a late Victorian style, really flowery, the traditional one we use. So we just thinned that out a bit, really. The parts are in the British Library and they're available online, or is it IESMLP, that site? You can get the original parts and have a look at it. And of course, it's just a figured bass part with a solo. So the solo line is supposed to be what it's all about, with just some chords underneath it. And I think the traditional version we use, it's quite, particularly the last one with all those octave semiquavers, is just really inappropriate. And the number of pianists that moan about that, oh, come on. So we got rid of all that. And I changed some of the solo lines. So that was nice. I really enjoyed working on that and approaching it from a fresh direction. Yeah.
Wow. It's a great, and it's one of those pieces that we, so many of us, that was our first solo piece. That was my first solo piece back. And it really is interesting, the backstory and the fact that some of those movements aren't actually from Eccles. And I think you even mentioned that Bach used some of Eccles' movements, right? And
that's right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Amazing.
And then you also got the Dragonetti Duetto, or three of the duettos, right? Or is that one duetto and three movements? I always forget how those are laid out.
It's it's one duetto with three movements. Okay. I mean, they're pretty short movements. The last movement is almost like another variation. But so it is one duetto. I'd not come across it before. It was one of my pupils in Hungary had given it to me, and I needed to fill up some time in the disc, and I really wanted to put some chamber music in it. And I had wondered about doing something. I talked to our principal cellist in the orchestra, the Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra, who's fantastic, crazy Swedish guy, really flamboyant, wonderful cellist. And I said, how about us doing the Rossini? And he made a very, very important point, really, that we could have learned that and done a worthy performance, but it's not like we had lived with it. And I think that's an important thing. If you're going to really do something, if you're going to play some music that has been recorded and played a lot, you really have to sort of have lived with it a long time. So I thought, okay, so maybe not Rossini. And then this Dragonetti, which I think there is one other early style playing recording, but no contemporary recording. I thought, well, that sounds interesting. We played it a few times. I thought it was great fun. And it was a real insight to see what sort of a player Dragonetti must have been, because it's technically quite tricky. It's awkward. It's and the thing of all those huge strings he had and that big bow and playing on the side of the string. I find it challenging enough with modern bow and low action strings and everything just comfortable. It's a challenge. So it's really interesting. But that was really nice. We had a lot of fun. Chamber music is great, isn't it? Because you can work together with that. Trying to nail Jesper down to do a particular bow, always a challenge, because he comes up with a great idea next time as well. So we had a lot of fun doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's remarkable that when you really think about the gear Dragonetti was playing on, it's all the more amazing that he was able to get around the bass and play those parts. And again, like everything,
unbelievable.
Yeah, like everything on the album, you've got some great history just about Dragonetti and whether Beethoven, whether he had an influence on Beethoven, starting to write more challenging bass parts. So really interesting. And again, great, just the setting it in context. So very cool. And I gotta give a try to those duettos on an upcoming
they're
recital.
lovely to play. Really nice to play. Yeah.
And then you've got this new work, John Kinsella, and 15th of April, 1912, which is, of course, the sinking of the Titanic. So again, tying into this, tell us about that piece and John's writing.
Okay.
Yeah,
right. Okay, so I had on the album, I thought, okay, I want one new piece. I want to come up with a new piece, and also, okay, I've been playing professionally in England for about 30 years when I did that, and I come from Dublin, and I thought, well, it'd be really nice to do something that actually links right from the start. And John Kinsella, I used to know him in Ireland when I worked in the orchestra there, and he's a very highly thought of, very colourful, creative composer. I thought, I wonder would he be interested, and I got in touch with him. And as it happened, he was just reading all about the Titanic, and he was actually quite fired up about the subject, which was amazing. And he said, David, I'd love to do this. I've been thinking about doing something along these lines. And when he knew my personal story, he said, look, we got to do it. So that's how that started. And funnily enough, I assumed, when he talked about composing, I assumed he was going to do a piece for bass and piano, just because that's what you sort of expect. But then when I got the draft from him, it was for solo bass. And what I found really remarkable in this piece is I think he's been incredibly successful at composing it's about 12 minutes long, this piece, with such a huge variety of sounds. Because I think that was a challenge for a solo double bass piece, or solo any piece actually, to have a variety of colors without moving to another instrument, and he really did that. And I was stunned. I said to him, John, you have written so incredibly well for the bass, but it wasn't like I was sitting down with him every week saying, okay, this would work that way. It was no, he just wrote. He said, well, I don't know how he did that. Okay, we did talk and we went back and forth a few things. There's a couple of harmonics. He wanted a top F harmonic, which isn't on the bass at that particular pitch, but he insisted so we had to stop that and make it sound like a harmonic. There's a few things. He had one string crossing passage that worked so well. I thought, we could make that a bit longer, John. So we made that a bit longer. But basically, the piece is as he wrote. And the piece basically describes, in music, the journey that Titanic went to its fated end. And, when I performed a couple of times in public, and there's a colligno passage at the end, just after the collision with the iceberg, where the ship is actually breaking up, and he does it really effectively, and the whole thing is built up to this, and it's been quite funny and gratifying. At this bit, the audience, when I've been playing, were sort of stuck in their seats, rigid, waiting to see what's going to happen, and you colligno really hard, and they sort of jump back in their seats. So I think the piece is terrifically effective. I'd love to see it. It's published by Recital Music as well. So, I think in years to come, that's going to be on diploma exams and that, because it's an advanced piece, of course, but it's one of these pieces that sits really well on the bass. You have to work it out, but actually once you've done that, it's very playable,
Yeah, well, what a cool idea to have. It's like a tone poem for solo double bass, and that's published by Recital Music, and then also the title track is published by Recital Music. You said,
yes,
right? Okay,
David Hayes, Recital Music.
Yeah, love. Shout out to David Hayes. That's great, and we will definitely link up to both of those. So that's incredibly cool. This episode is brought to you by Steve Swan String Bass, which is home to the largest collection of double basses on the West Coast between Los Angeles and Canada. That's a lot of miles, folks. Steve's showroom is outstanding, absolutely worth a visit. It's located just south of San Francisco Airport, SFO, and he has about 70 basses on display. And these basses range from student entry-level instruments all the way to the finest professional instruments. I've sent so many students and referred so many people to Steve's shop. He really does great work. And if you're looking for a bass, you're going to find one that suits your needs, your playing needs, and your budgetary needs for sure. SteveSwanStringBass.com is where you can go. And thank you, Steve, for sponsoring the podcast. One thing that has impressed me about Upton Bass ever since I got to know them was how many artists there are out there that are so satisfied with the work that Upton has done for them. Here's Mark Ramirez on his experiences having Upton copy his beautiful Cavani bass.
I do a lot of moving around and giving master classes and stuff like this. I had a copy made of it by the Uptons, by Gary and Eric Roy at the Upton shop. They made a copy of it, but they made an even smaller copy. I think it's a 7/8 copy of the bass. I use it now. I use that bass for my solo playing, which I do a lot. Recently, I've been doing a lot, especially here. And it has a detachable neck. The detachable neck, man, I tell you, in Europe, it's the craze.
Learn more at uptonbass.com, and thanks for sponsoring the podcast, guys. and then you round out the album with, of course, another piece that so many of us love to perform, the Schubert Arpeggione Sonata.
Yeah.
And again, you tell a great story of just the Arpeggione and this kind of strange instrument that probably would have been lost to history had Schubert not written
exactly.
that piece.
Extraordinary.
Yeah, and it's again like all the album, lovely playing, and you describe that middle movement, which I really do think of also as a song without words. It's sort of, I just love that movement to death.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So why the Arpeggione for this recording? And
well, it is probably I mean, again, for bass player, we've heard that on viola, we've heard it on cello, and I've heard it played on the bass by Edwin Barker. And just once you hear Ed play that on the bass, you don't want to hear it played on anything else ever. I took lessons with Ed when I was in, various times. And it was just when I got that sonata, it was his record with that sonata. I just loved that. That was many years ago now. And it was one of those records, I don't know if you've had remember when I was about 15, I got a recording of Janos Starker playing the Brahms sonatas with Abba Bogan on piano. I even remember the name of the pianist because it was there. And I listened to that probably constantly for 2 years. And when I heard Ed many, many, many years, so this would have been about the mid-90s, I suppose, I got this. And I just listened and listened again, and I was just blown. I just love that. And ever since I heard that, and I felt the way it worked, the way Ed made that work, I thought this piece needs to be heard on the bass. People don't know, just because the bass just has that sort of beautiful, sort of somber piece, isn't it? It has this sort of slightly mellow characteristics. And I think that so works on the bass. And I really tried to bring those sort of slightly sad and vocal, melancholic feelings to it.
It's a great performance of it. And Ed, I love that Ed Barker was an influence on you. I just can't say enough good things about him. I love his rendition of that piece. Absolutely. And his vibrato, and actually his stand partner is one of those people, Larry Wolf. His album, that was one of those things I think I memorized every bar of every piece on that album. Of course, a couple others, Gary Carr and some others. That's great. And I really hope that, and I think it will happen, that this album that you put out is one of those that people come back to and are inspired by.
Wow, that would be amazing.
Well, and it's great, and it's just so great that that the title track has had such an impact, and with that video, how could it not? But really, just all around, I love the playing, and it's
great. Thanks, Jason.
Talk about a great debut album. So
great, thank you. Yeah.
David, thank you so much for chatting. Folks, check out this album. It's awesome. DavidDalyMusic.net will take you there. Titanic Double Bass, or look it up wherever you get your music, and let him know that you checked it out and that you dig it. I know that he would really appreciate that. David and I are going to talk about his career. There are wonderful stories and takeaways and lessons from his career. He's somebody that I should have had on the podcast years ago. I know I say that a lot, but it's true. So we will do a deep dive on his career and his path through the music world at some point here. But for now, Titanic Double Bass. Check out the video, check out the album, share it with friends, share it on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. That would be great. And if you know of somebody, something that's happening, someone that I should connect with, that you would like to have me connect with, or if you would like to help me get connected with them, reach out to me. feedback@contrabassconversations.com. It's you, the listener, that make these conversations happen. At this point, having done this over a decade, everything that happens is a result of a listener recommending that I look into something. I have a long list, so I can't get to, sometimes it's months or even years before I get to something, but I note everything that people recommend, and especially when things start coming up multiple times, that's when I really try to get it on the calendar. So send me a message. I'd really like to hear what you'd like to hear more of, and I'd just like to hear from you. That would be great. Contrabass Conversations, we've got a great team here producing these episodes. Michael Cooper, Steve Hinchy, Trevor Jones, and Mitch Mooring. Mitch, in addition to podcast production, is making great basses in the Dallas area. Look him up online at mitchmooring.com. And thank you to Krista Copper for cataloging and archiving everything that we cover on this show. We have more highlight best of episodes coming soon as a result of Krista's work. So thank you so much. And thank you to you, the listener. You're the reason why we do this. And I, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. I'm your host, Jason Heath, coming to you each and every week from San Francisco, California. And we will see you again soon for more life in the low end of the spectrum.